Hello, my name is George Moore, owner of Moore's Sewing Center in Southern California. This Sewing Tech Talk with Cathy series is a new series we started that describes a trifecta of creativity, which is a phrase I coined when I put the Brother Stellaire series in combination with the ScanNCut and the new PrintModa. This combination really unleashes the total creativity in embroidery, applique, embroidery quilting, and everything to do with embroidery. And so let's give it to Cathy, and you can tell how excited she is, but we'll come back and I'll tell you the special deals we have on these components.
This is the Brother Stellaire. This is the Brother ScanNCut. Separately, they're awesome machines. Amazing embroidery and sewing. Amazing cutting of just about whatever you want. Separately, they're awesome. But when you connect the two together through my connection, well, both are better. They make each other better. I'm speechless. Anyway, let's explore the my connection between the ScanNCut and the Brother Stellaire. I'm Cathy. This is Sewing Tech Talk, and we're going to make each of these machines just dance today. Come join me. So, my connection, what that does is that takes the ScanNCut and your embroidery machine. Now, it has to be certain ones, obviously. It's basically the two top of the lines on the embroidery machine and the ScanNCut. So that would be the Stellaire, either sewing only or, no, sewing and embroidery, and of course the Luminaire, and the ScanNCut SDX325 or 330D. So those models can communicate with each other, and it's called My Connection. So what we're going to do today is explore a little bit more in depth what that connection does, because what it does is it makes both machines able to do more. And there's three things that kind of happen, and it's a flow both ways. So I could start at the machine or start at the ScanNCut, but we're just going to try to fit everything in. How does that sound? So I have a handout for today's video, like I have for all my videos. And since the ScanNCut might be new for some of you embroiderers out there, we're going to talk a little bit more today about how the ScanNCut works for embroidery along with my connection. And the handout is a practical guide to the ScanNCut accessories, because your ScanNCut as it comes out of the box is good to go, but you can add stuff to it. So we'll talk about that just a little bit. But if you want a guide to the goods, the handout kind of takes you through that. And also at the very back of the handout, there's a link, because you can get the manual for your ScanNCut and the manual for how My Connection works. It takes you in great detail about how this process goes. But we're going to do an overview today. So what I'm going to do today is show you. We're going to start with embroidery applique, because that's kind of the best connection, I think, between the two. So I'm doing this little quilt, this little wall hanging, and what I did is we had a spring snow last year, took a picture of the tree outside of my bedroom window. It's so pretty and frosty, even with a little bit of green that was starting to pop up. I printed this on the PrintModa fabric printer, and you can see I got a really good image, and this is fabric. It's not a printed piece of paper. So having had that, I wanted to put snowflakes around it, and snowflakes in embroidery applique. So with the My Connection, what I could do is I could take a built-in design from the ScanNCut, take it to the machine, and turn that into a snowflake. So let's go through that process. So now in the embroidery machine, and I'm sure you've heard me talk a lot about it in previous Sewing Tech Talks, there is my design center. If I was working on a baby lock machine, it's called IQ Designer. But they work basically the same. Except in Brother, I have this new connection we can do with the My Connection, adding more shapes. Because there's built-in shapes, they call them stamps in IQ Designer, where you can do all kinds of fun stuff. Yes, you can bring in your image, yes, you can scan an image, but the shapes are really beautiful, pure artwork. And we have quite a few of them in the machine. But the ScanNCut has so many more. And the one thing that My Connection does is it takes the built-in shapes from your ScanNCut and sends those shapes to the machine. And you can use those for digitizing and creating. And that's how I did my snowflakes. It's a built-in design on the ScanNCut, sent that outline to the embroidery machine and created an applique pretty fast. It also, by connection, enables that machine to do an applique, boom, just like that. So we'll get to that when we get to the machine. Let's talk about My Connection, where you get your designs and how you're going to send them to the machine. First of all, when you get your ScanNCut, there's a card that says My Connection, and that number goes into the settings of your machine. If your machine doesn't have that, update it to the latest version and it'll be there. Your machine has to be registered with Artspira. That's a free Brother mobile app, both your machine and your ScanNCut. Because what it does is it sends it wirelessly through that Artspira app from the ScanNCut to the machine and to the machine to the ScanNCut. It's pretty cool. And there's all kinds of other cool things on Artspira. They call it Artspira. I call it Artspira. I'm probably wrong, but I'm going to go with it. Please forgive me, brother people. I'm going to call it Artspira, even though you think it's Artspira, I guess. Anyway, where do I get that? So when I come into the machine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to what's called My Connection. And what My Connection does is it brings up all the designs that you can send to your machine. It's also where you can receive stuff from the embroidery machine. So when I go to My Connection, I have both send and receive. Now I want to create this snowflake. So what I'm going to do is find that image and send it off to the machine. So we're going to go send, and that brings up the patterns in the machine and machine memory. Now here's the thing. The designs that are built into your ScanNCut are the ones that we can send over. The machine memory are designs you may have brought in and modified or something like that. They're not designs that you might have brought in from the outside. So how do I know what I can send? I touch pattern and I have all these awesome patterns that are built in. So I think my snowflake is under here. There's my snowflakes. Look at all the fun patterns. Now some of the patterns have multiple areas, multiple colors that you can cut out with your ScanNCut. But all of those multiple colors, they can also be different appliques as well. It's pretty cool. So let's just start with something simple. Let me find my design. I think it's this one. That's the one. Now, we can modify the size, but I don't really have to because I'm going to do that within the machine. If a design is very, very large, like say a 12 by 12, what you're going to do is you're going to go down to settings and you're going to pick the size of the mat of your the hoop of your machine that you can send that off to. So it's going to modify the size of that design because obviously we don't have a 12 by 12 hoop like we have a 12 by 12 mat. So that's okay. And okay. And now I'm going to send this off to the machine. So all I have to do is say okay. It's going to show me this design is just one color. That's great. I'm going to say okay and set. I'm going to show it and send it off to the machine. Now here I can do save, I can do edit, I can do all the other kinds of different things for it. I really just want to send it off the machine. So once I hit transfer, it's going to shoot it up to the sky and then the machine's going to be able to pull it down. So let's transfer that design. I've already done it, but we'll do it again. And it's going to give me a little warning telling me that you can only do one at a time. That makes sense. But you can only do so many, and the machine's going to hold about 20 of them. Once you have gone through 20, the oldest ones are going to drop away. So if you're a real big crafter, what you're going to do is you're going to, on your machine, you can take in that design, save it to the memory of the machine, and don't worry about that temporary pocket. It says that all in the instructions. But it's going to remind me of that. I know that, it's okay. So I'm going to say okay. And what it's going to do, it's transferring this design off to the embroidery machine. Now, we're going to go to the embroidery machine and get everything set. But let me talk to you a little bit about how we're going to cut on the ScanNCut, because I know that there's all different ways that you can do this. So when you do an embroidery applique, generally it's 3 steps. What you do is you have the outline stitched down, you lay a piece of fabric on top of that, you stitch around that, you take your scissors and you cut it as best as you can. But my friends, I'm doing snowflakes and they can be very complicated. So where's my little snowflake? This is the exact size of the applique that I'm going to create. Look at how intricate that is. And I'm a pretty good cutter, but it's going to be hard for me to cut around all of that. So the cutting machine is going to do a great job for me. Now, how do you set up the machine to cut? Like I said, the handout has a practical guide to all the different accessories. But when you get your machine, you generally get a standard tack mat, which means that it's just about average. It will be okay for many, many different things that you can cut, because your ScanNCut can cut so many different things. Paper, tons of different stuff, including the fabric. So when I'm going to put my applique down, I'm going to use a 2-sided adhesive, and it usually comes on a piece of paper. And what you do is you're going to iron it to the back of your fabric, and 2 ways you can go. If you have the paper side on the back of your fabric, you can stick it to, say, that standard mat if it's not too sticky. And then take off the design, cut it out, peel it off. But what you can also do is you can peel the paper off and literally stick the fabric with that sticky side down to that standard mat. If you use a low tack mat, which is a little bit less sticky, great for paper, then you might have to support it on the edges. So the standard mat works great. And we'll talk about that because most of you will have that standard mat. If you don't use the fusible, you could use a fabric mat. And a fabric mat is super sticky. And it's really only good for, say, just fabric. That adhesive's going to stick to the mat and you're not going to be happy. So you could stick it upside down if you wanted to. I think it's just easiest to put it on the standard mat. Here's the standard mat with a dust cover, and I'm just going to stick it with the adhesive side down. Make sure it doesn't stick too good. If it does, you can touch it to something and pull it away and get your mat just a little bit less sticky, and then I'm going to be ready to cut. When you're cutting, you have a couple options. Your ScanNCut's going to come with a standard blade, and it can cut paper, it can cut fabric, it can cut all kinds of stuff. The issue is, though, do you have fabric scissors like I do? What happens is when you use your standard blade to cut maybe paper, it kind of dulls it down. It's no problem. You can change the blade out, and it's really easy to do. But what I do is I got an extra blade, and I use this one for paper, and I have one that's just a little bit only used for fabric, and it stays a little bit sharper, a little bit longer. So it's an option. It's easy to do. To change the blade, you simply unscrew it, take that blade out, put the new blade in, and screw it back on. Super easy to do. You may want to get an extra little blade holder, that way you wouldn't have to do it, and you could label the blade holder. There's also another blade that's available, and it is the fabric blade. It is much thinner than the traditional blade, and it only goes so deep. So it's really only good for a single layer of fabric. So just a thought to keep in mind. That would work, but remember, we do have that adhesive on the back. It'd probably work. You also have available that you can get separately a rotary blade. And this rotary blade has a little mini, teeny, tiny rotary blade in there, just like your rotary cutter. Talks about that in the handout. It takes a little bit longer, but this is great for cutting all kinds of super thin fabrics. And if you get the rotary blade kit, you get some extra files that you can use to cut out different quilt blocks. Now, just a word, these files are extra different designs that you can use to cut out quilt blocks, but they're not the ones we're going to be able to transfer because they're not built into the machine. Just something to keep in mind. Something that you can also do, talking about doing quilt blocks, you can cut out different quilt block pieces and have them exactly how you want the size to be. And the machine will also draw in that seam allowance for you. So that's pretty cool. So there's different wash away markers, there's a pin holder, and you can draw in that seam line to help you sew those together. I think that's another video. We need to put some blocks together. So basically, that's how you can set up your machine. But we need to see how to make that design, don't we? That snowflake, so we can get it set up in the machine and send it back and cut it out in our ScanNCut. So I sent the design over. What we need to do now is go to the Stellaire, bring up that snowflake design in my design center, and create our perfect little snowflake. I'll see you over at the machine. So now I've transferred that outline from the ScanNCut to the machine. Let's pull it up in my design center and make that snowflake applique. So I go to the stamp key, what's called as the circle and the square. And once you do my connection, you have this little icon right here. And what that does is that brings up, this is called your temporary pocket, and it's looking for that snowflake right now. As you can see, I've done a few other snowflakes and some other projects too, which is pretty fun. So when it comes up, it's already selected, and I say, okay. Now, it is ready to go. The cool thing is, in the past, what I've had to do is go through a number of processes to create an applique. But now with my connection, it's almost instant. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pretend that I'm going to be making it into a regular filled embroidery design. I'm going to touch the fill bucket, put it in there, and actually I really don't need an outline, so I'm going to take that off. And that just proves my point that you don't have to make this into an applique like I'm going to do. This could be a regular embroidery design. So everything has no outline and that inside. Next. Now, I could definitely sew it like this. It's a regular filled in snowflake. Let's go preview. Okay. And send it off to the land of embroidery. And what it is right now, it's just a regular filled in snowflake. Remember, this could happen with any of those different outlines brought in from ScanNCut. So what I'm going to do is, this is the new fun feature, check it out. I'm going to create an applique. So I'm coming in here, this is new when you do my connection. I'm going to touch that. Now, I'm going to select this because that's what I want my applique to go around. I could pick the different parts to create an applique. Next. Now, I want to tell it if I want the inside parts or just the outside parts, or just the inside. So I want all the different areas all around, and I can have a zigzag stitch, which is what I'm going to choose because I just want a light stitching around there. I can have a satin stitch, which is much heavier, or I can have none at all, and that would just create like maybe just an iron-on patch. And I have different choices. I'm okay with what it is. Let's hit preview. Now it's going to show me, this is the stitching going around there, and this little kind of checkerboard is where the applique is going to be. You can use that to check and make sure that you have what you want to do. If you don't want to see that, you can turn it off and have mock applique fabric in there, but I'm good with that. Next, let's see what we got. Now here's what's cool. It already did the solid stitching line, was for placement. This is for cutting. This is applique material. Now I actually don't need that because I'm going to cut it with the ScanNCut. So I'm literally going to choose that, and I'm going to say, I don't even have to sew that. I'm going to save myself all kinds of time. Okay. Now, here's what's cool. Here's my design. Remember, I chose a light outline to go all around it. I'm ready to go to the land of embroidery. But let's do this. Let's send this official one. Remember, I could have changed it. I could have changed the size. Under the memory pocket, I now have this, and I'm going to send that exact outline to the ScanNCut. And it's sending it directly to the ScanNCut to cut out my snowflake, so I can start to stitch. I can start to stitch, and my ScanNCut can be cutting out the applique piece to go on the inside. Remember how, how that snowflake is so intricate. Now, the regular applique, I would stitch that outline, paste a piece of fabric, stitch around that, take my scissors and try and cut it out. But the ScanNCut eliminates all of that, and I'm just doing a snowflake. but there are so many designs built into the ScanNCut. I went to the website and I printed out all the designs that come in the ScanNCut that I'm using, which is the SDX 325. Let me show you a few of those and let's imagine the possibilities. Look at these. These are so cool. Look at all these different designs. All of these can be turned into embroideries as well as appliques. Let's go, there's so many to see. Look how fun these are. And remember, all of these different parts can be turned into different appliques and or embroideries. Used in my design center. Oops, so many. Hold on. Look at all these cool designs. Now this is really cool. These are all the different words. This is like words put together with the months of the year. How fun is that? And oh, look at this. These are the different, this is an applique. I can turn that into an applique to be on the border of my quilt. Look at how fun that is. So there are so many different choices to use to create an applique or an embroidery using those shapes that come from the ScanNCut. Now remember, you're going to register your machine, put in the number that comes in the card on the ScanNCut, and both of those are going to have to be registered through Artspira. Or Artspira. I like to call it Artspira. And it's a great app that you're going to want to have anyway. So what Artspira is, it goes on your mobile device. I have it on my iPad, but you get different cutting designs every month, new cutting designs, different inspiration, and you can send the designs to your cutting machine, to your embroidery machine, and that's exactly how I printed out that picture that goes in the middle of my quilt. You can print your own picture on fabric, and it's pretty amazing. So now all I have to do is stitch the inside, the outline of my snowflake, cut out my snowflake, and put it in, stitch it out. I'm good to go. So let's get started. Okay, so we send over our design. Let's fetch it and cut it out. So we're going to go to My Connection. Oops, I went the wrong way. There it is, My Connection. Now, we sent the outline before, right? Now we need to get back that exact outline. Because remember, if I resized it or changed it in any way, we want to cut exactly what the machine wants to stitch. So what we're going to do is retrieve. And it says wireless LAN device, but it shows us that it's a sewing machine. And touch that. And here comes our snowflake. There it is. Now, here's our snowflake. It created it as kind of an entirely stitched out design, but we just want to cut out that outline, that applique. And this little symbol right here, that little shield, that's our applique. If we touch this, that would give us the snowflake as an embroidery design, and we could also take the outline of that, but that's not really what we want. We just want to take that outline, and it's all just ready to go. So all I have to do is say OK, and check it out. Everything's good, and when I hit set, it's going to put it on the mat of the ScanNCut. Now, the great thing about the ScanNCut is the word scan, because I put my fabric on and I want to see exactly where I want to place it. So all I have to do is touch this icon here, and it's going to scan the fabric that I've placed on the mat. Now remember, I took that iron-on, the double-sided iron-on, I ironed it on the back of my fabric, and I did peel off the paper, and I gently placed it on my standard mat, which is probably the mat that you got with your machine. And I wanted to make sure that it was well ironed on so that it lifted up well, but it's stuck good enough to cut. So there it is. I'm going to bring my head over so I can see to make sure my design is exactly where I want it to be. Check. Now, Pretty easy so far, right? It automatically came in exactly the size that I need. I can do all kinds of adjustments, but I don't want to change it, right? Because it's the exact size that I need. All I have to do is say okay, and I want to make sure that I tell it to cut. Now remember, you could also do this as a drawing. You say you wanted to make a quilt, a card to go with a quilt that you're gifting. You could draw this exact design, and that would be pretty cool. But I want to cut it. And it created everything ready to go. Now, if I had put this, if I left that double-sided transfer paper on the back of this, I might only want to cut halfway through. And I could tell the machine to cut, do a half, what's called a half cut. I don't need that because I've actually taken that paper away. Just remember, that's another option for you to do. Now, I think everything's good. I can do a little test, but I'm pretty sure I'm okay. The great thing about the ScanNCut DX is it's an auto blade system. What does that mean? It means I don't have to make any adjustments. The machine does it for me. So all I have to do is hit start, and voila, the blade's going to come and touch the mat. See how thick the mat is? It's going to touch the fabric. See how thick it is? And just like magic, it's going to cut out my snowflake. Now the cool thing is, I didn't have to get my best pair of scissors and cut this out when I'm doing it on the machine. It's going to take it a minute, and I dare say it'd take me a little bit longer than a minute to do this. Now the spatula came with your machine, but you can get others. You can get something that's a little bit like a metal one. Remember, in that handout it talks about the ScanNCut accessories that you can get. What you want to do is, when this is done, we're going to unload the mat. That's this icon right here. And let me take it out. And you're going to lift up this fabric, and ooh, there's our snowflake. Pretty neat. Let me just take off all this fabric so that you can see. Now, what I want to do is I want to pull the snowflake up. It's stuck pretty good, but it's not stuck, of course, permanently. What you want to do is you want to pull it up and gently pull it off so that you're not going to stretch the fabric. Take a little bit of time. But we're going to pull from the thickest part, if we can, and lift that snowflake up. See those little parts that are left behind? I couldn't cut those with my little scissors. Now I have my perfect snowflake to finish up my applique. Pretty sweet, right? So the connection between the two is absolutely awesome. Now don't forget, you can also do a third option with your machine. And what is that? That means you can take an embroidery design and you can send just the embroidery design over, and the machine's going to take an outline of it. So on my quilt back here, you can see, well, I'm going to move this mat because it's going to stick to it. You can see that I did, this is the design that's built into the ScanNCut. This is the design that's built into the ScanNCut. That's a picture of my grandmother that I printed with the printer. And up here I did the lettering. I did her name, Lillian Marie. Now what I could have also done is all these letters could have been sent to the ScanNCut, and I could have cut them out of, say, heat transfer vinyl. I could have made that into just regular vinyl to put on a piece of glass or something like that. I could use that to cut anything I can cut with my ScanNCut. So I can take designs, bring them in, create a cutting file, and I can do all kinds of things with my connection. So thanks for watching me today. I'm going to send it off to George. Remember, the ScanNCut makes the machine better, and the machine makes the ScanNCut better too. Thanks for watching me today, and Have fun out there. Get creative.
Thanks, Cathy. That was an incredible presentation. And so let's go over the special offer we have on the Brother Stellaire series. So we have the XJ2, which is their combination sewing and embroidery, and the XE2, which is dedicated embroidery. They both share the same embroidery features, which is a large 9.5 by 14 inch embroidery area with over 780 built-in embroidery designs, and of them, over 100 of them are Disney. It also has over 30 fonts and large, beautiful monograms. And with the fonts, you can edit in all kinds of arrangements. You can arc, you can array, you can even cut and paste and kern it in some custom ways. Speaking of customization, you can take a design and do an automatic applique around it. And with the matrix copy, you can copy this very quickly to make patches. And if we had the ScanNCut, we can actually send it to the ScanNCut, cut out those patches, and then embroider them beautifully. An additional advanced technology is a new 2-point laser positioning. I can take something like a name and position it perfectly on a line. I can use it to do multiple hoopings and match them perfectly. I can even use it for edge-to-edge quilting. Now, part of what the Stellaire series offers is a special relationship with the ScanNCut. They actually can marry together, so I can send an applique design right from my machine and it will cut it out perfectly for beautiful applique. But better yet, I can send a design from my ScanNCut and turn it into embroidery. It also unlocks a new feature where I can choose one of the colors of my design, whether if it's a built-in design, I can choose that and turn it into applique. But let's take that heart that I sent over. I turn it into embroidery. I select the color, and now it's applique. Now let's bring over the third part of the piece. I want to create my own fabric, and I can do that with PrintModa. I took an image of a rose and I arranged it just in a beautiful kaleidoscope of color. And I printed that fabric and placed it on in the ScanNCut. I took my design I created on the Stellaire from the ScanNCut, sent it over to the ScanNCut, cut it out, and I have one complete embroidery design created with that trifecta of creativity. Now the XJ2 also is a sewing machine, and it has a large 11.25 inch opening, beautiful lighting. It has 760 built-in stitches, from quilting stitches to applique to utility. It even has automatic stippling and some beautiful decorative stitches that are very, very wide. It also has an automatic 1/4 inch feature which moves the needle over a 1/4 inch from the foot, and you can use the laser guidance it has on there so you can just do some beautiful piecing. It also has amazing fabric control with an automatic fabric sensor, and this gives you the ability to sense multiple layers like in denim, or if I want to sew on some sheer fabric like this tricot, I can do that beautifully, or even working with elastics. It handles the fabric beautifully. If it's even more extreme, we can add the digital dual feed. This is a belt-driven feed system that gives perfect contact on the fabric. And so you see here with this marine vinyl, there's no slippage. I also can use it with such things as minky, which is hard to sew with, and of course, quilting. So let's talk about the special we have on the Stellaire XJ2. This is the combination sewing and embroidery machine. This has a manufacturer suggested list price of $12,999.99, and it's on sale for $9,999.99. We have interest-free payments, plus we're offering free shipping across the country. But wait, we have a special bonus. we're going to include that PrintModa Studio, that fabric printer by Brother. That has a retail value of $1,499, and that's included free for a limited time. Now, let's say we want the ultimate package, the Trifecta of Creativity. That's when we add the Scan&Cut. So you add the Scan&Cut, now we have all three items, and we have that on sale for $10,749.98. We have interest-free payments and free shipping across the country. But wait, this is for a limited time. Now, if I want just the dedicated embroidery, let's say you already have a sewing machine and you want the XE2, which is dedicated embroidery. This has a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $9,999.99. We have it on sale for $7,499.99. We're offering interest-free payments as well as free shipping across the country. And of course, we're going to include that bonus, the PrintModa Studio, free with the purchase, and that has a regular retail price of $1,499. But let's make it the ultimate, the Trifecta of Creativity. You will get the Scan&Cut added with that, and that total package for all three items is $8,249.98. And we do also have interest-free payments on that as well and free shipping. But don't wait, this is a limited time offer. Click on the link to order. You can email us at customerservice@moores-sew.com or give us a call at 1-800-865-9666.